It's not happening. All right. Sheikh, your life. Do you want to start, inshallah?
Yep. Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Amma ba'du. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. We are back. For those of you that may have seen this before, we had these sessions, mashallah. It's a blessing to have someone with the likes of Usman Mughni, a licensed family therapist, with us, as we had him before, speaking about these issues that deal with every single human being. Even though this is on a platform of the Muslim community, we see that it is for everyone. It is for people that have a heart and a mind that can sometimes be affected and will be affected and face trials and tribulations that may bring forth certain behaviors that we just need to examine. And someone like Usman Mughni, mashallah, tabarakallah, that Allah has blessed him to be able to facilitate communities, Muslim and non-Muslim communities, in this regard. And as I mentioned, he's a family therapist. We had sessions before that dealt with demographics within the household. But alhamdulillah, and we say qadarullah ma sha'a fa'al, that now it is with the COVID that has taken place, we thought to have it again, because many things that we have learned as family members, as mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, grandmothers, grandfathers, uncles, aunties, neighbors, community members, there's always a time to review ourselves and to review each other for the betterment of relationships. So without further ado, I really want to get started. As you see the title, or those of you that saw the title on my Instagram and on the different platforms on Islamic Center of Coppell Facebook, you saw that it's called Our House. And I decided to call that because each household is, learning new things about each other with this COVID, and then what just took place, even with the lack of electricity and water, or if we had it, and giving it to others and helping others. We learn about each other. And I think that's going to be a lifelong journey with the different events that take place. So as I mentioned, mashallah, Brother Usman Mughni is a licensed medical family therapist, and he has been in the community for a while, mashallah. He originally hails from Chicago, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And he's been someone that's been active and diligent, and not has been, is active and diligent in addressing these issues that deal with human beings. And I feel that it's very pertinent for the community of Islamic Center of Coppell, and other than that, to be able to hear what he has to say in regards to ourselves and seeing how we can help ourselves and help others. And this is definitely a means of showing gratitude to God. And I really want to take that opportunity. So what we're going to talk about today, as you saw, we're going to split it up with different demographics of the household. Each and every one of us is a son to someone, a daughter to someone, maybe a mother and father, and a sibling maybe to someone. But definitely we have some type of relationship with someone. So today we're going to just do a general overview of the family and some guidelines that one should take in mind and keep in mind when dealing with their family in their house. And then the next following weeks, we're going to, after that, or the following month, we're going to go into the husband and wife, and then go on into the mother and then the father. Certain specific considerations with certain relationships and certain demographics within the house. So, inshallah, we want to start it off by, it's going to be interview style. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and he's going to expound on that. And then I may touch on that. Just one more caveat. If any of you have any questions, and I really hope you do, that you look at your Facebook. If you're on Facebook Live, you type it in the comments, whether it's the Peaceful You Facebook Live site, that's the name of his establishment is Peaceful You. You can go to that website. You can go to the Facebook if you have a question. You can go on my Facebook if you have a question, Abdullah Oduro. And you can also go on the Islamic Center of Coppell Facebook. And when you type it in the comments, your question, it will show up here. And we will, inshallah, ask that question because we can see it right now. So, Brother Usman, I have a couple of, questions, dare even say requests that, I want to bring forth to you, and I'd like for you to expound upon, inshallah ta'ala. So the first of them is some of the key factors we should consider when being with the family in this time. particularly the COVID, which it engenders certain changes. What are some key factors that the average family member should consider and take into consideration?
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman, Bismillah, first of all, Jazakumullah khair for your kind words as always, Sheikh, and thank you for inviting me. I always look forward to our talks together. It's a dynamic duo. So, as far as considerations, it's very interesting. I think I mentioned this even when we were talking about when COVID first hit us, when you and I were talking, that these type of events, they bring out the best in us and the worst in us. We learn a lot about ourselves through these events. And subhanAllah, like we will, just like COVID is going to be in the history books, this event in Dallas, in Texas, from what I was told, we haven't had weather like this in over 100 years. And when we look at history, we learn about who we are as a people, how families behaved, how communities behaved. Will we be looked upon in a good light? Were we generous with each other? Did we support each other? Or did we hoard all the toilet paper? So it's a very interesting time. So I think it's a great, it's a great, great way to start is to kind of look at how COVID and how these events actually force us to look within our own family structures, right? Because when we talk about psychological well-being within a family, the ability to adjust to change, that's how we determine, that's how we determine how psychologically healthy, how resilient, how strong a family is, how strong their communication is, how strong their ability to create boundaries, to adjust to situations, to adjust roles at times, right? So these are unexpected times, and it's a good evaluation that we can, muhasaba, that we can have towards ourselves and towards our families. How have I responded to this stress? As husbands and as fathers, have we stepped up? As spouses, have we stepped up? As children, have we stepped up? As siblings, have we stepped up? Right? So stress makes the family respond in certain ways. And what happens is that the usual patterns, right? Let's suppose that we have one family member who worries a lot. We have one family member who kind of just takes the backseat and lets the other spouse deal with everything. Those patterns get highlighted in disaster situations like this. So then you really kind of see who's who, right? And so COVID brings to light family relationships, both unhealthy and healthy patterns. And so we're forced to really evaluate. And for example, now more than ever, between husband and wife, and we're going to talk about that, I think, next session, right? The husband and wife dynamic, we're actually seeing how communication is, because now both husband and wife are under the same roof. Most people are working remote and have been for the last year. When's the last time that's happened for most people? Almost never, right? So now you're really getting to see, do I have a connection with my spouse? Do I know how to communicate with them? How's my anger management skills, right? All of that is now being put to test. And, subhanAllah, some of us are, working on passing it. Some of us are somewhere in between. And I had heard one of my clients, he had consulted with one of the wonderful Imams over here. He was going through a difficult time, and he said that the Imam gave him some words of comfort, saying that even the Anbiya, they were tested by their families, right? So it's kind of a tangent, but I was just thinking about that Allah tests us and blesses us with family. And this is, I believe, where therapy can come in to kind of help us navigate through both of those things, whether Allah tests us or so how do we deal with certain difficult family members, for lack of better words, or like difficult situations, and how do we also benefit the most from the blessings that we have? How do we increase connection within family, right? So it's a good litmus test for us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so are you basically saying here, with this reality that has taken place with COVID, our outlook should be, let's take this as an opportunity to evaluate, as opposed to, okay, how is this change going to impact us negatively, or, oh man, what's going to happen?
Right, absolutely. How do you want to look at it? Do you want to look at it as like, oh my God, we're all stuck under the same roof, or do you want to look at it as like, maybe this, maybe my spouse or my children or one of the siblings who maybe was the black sheep of the family. This is a time where they can't just escape and go out with friends, right? So now maybe it's an opportunity for me to talk to them. It's an opportunity for me to connect with them. It's an opportunity for me to like maybe evaluate what type of relationship do I have with this person, and if it's not the best, what needs to be done in order to better that relationship? It's like I don't know if you've ever I don't know if this is a statement or what, but like, I mean, there's the situations where like you have like two family members who are not talking to each other, and you're thinking, God, I wish I could just lock them in a room and have them, hash out their issues and then not come out of that room until they're, come to an agreement. Well, we're all forced into that now, so.
Right. So, okay, so when looking at COVID and you realize, like, for instance, you talked about, for instance, the husband is used to going out to work at 7 a.m. and, some of them are like, okay, I get to leave. In the morning, it's kind of hectic with the family members. Couldn't find my socks, or I couldn't find my watch, or I couldn't find my shoes. And now I don't have to worry about that. Right. But can I find a room to where there's no commotion?
Right.
So that is where I guess, and I'm almost sure that that's a commonplace, right? To where, you have to go to work at 8 a.m. and you got to be on your laptop at 8 a.m. But you still got brothers saying, no, those are my socks. You got sisters saying something, and, and you're trying to tell them, be quiet.
Right.
So is at that moment, it's very important to, what would you advise the mother or father, right, at that moment, or even the youth? I mean, at that time, when they're trying to get on Zoom, and Zoom is, probably a multi-billion-dollar company now, when they're trying to get on Zoom and the doors are thin.
Right. No, absolutely. Don't expect perfection, right? Like I'm right now sitting in my room and not my office, because my office is still working on like getting back the power and everything, right? I have my little one with me who's being really good, mashallah, and quiet and nice, right?
Nice.
But you adjust. I mean, for all intents and purposes, if he has to go to the washroom in between this, I'm stopping the call, taking him to the washroom, and I'm jumping back on. Don't expect perfection, And so that's one of the things that I would suggest to all families, right? Look, unfortunately, and I'm not saying just settle for this, but the reality is that even very intelligent students, their grades have dropped, right? Schools are recognizing this. Even at the university level, a lot of universities have adjusted their grading to like pass fail now. It just because of the impact of COVID. Unfortunately, the suicide rate has been heightened. There's a lot more stress, and so I think when I spoke first about how we as a family can adjust, part of that adjustment is going to be kind of letting go of certain maybe stringent, rigid expectations that we had of each other, right? Are you going to be 100% at work? No, probably not. That's fine. But nor are your coworkers, right? Are you going to be like the perfect mom? No, you're not. Your kids are not. It's okay, because when we look back at this, we're subhanallah, like, wait, we just, by the mercy of Allah, survived the time where, we lost more people than, I don't know. Are we up to the Spanish flu or even more? I don't know. It's
That's a
it's up there, subhanallah.
Interesting.
So that's one of the things is being able to kind of take a step back, and I mean, for lack of better words, like, don't be so tough on yourself.
Yeah, so it's basically adjusting with the changes that's taking place in the schedules that you had before, and just like you mentioned, grades of intelligent people or diligent people will drop. You'll be surprised by emails and reports from teachers about certain children that you wouldn't expect.
Right.
Considering how one should react in these situations should slightly be, like you mentioned, relaxed, or I don't want to say laxed, but maybe considering a different approach.
Exactly. Very good. Okay. Yes. Considering a different approach. Maybe at this time the priority needs to be mental well-being over academics, right? Because our kids were all cooped up in the house, right? So maybe it needs to be more on relationship building, on less stressful subjects, like instead of like family outings, let's have like families going on walks together, these type of things, like putting more emphasis on that than then grades and chores. And I mean, even if the house is not 100% all the time, well, no, it's not going to be, because this is the first time everybody's in the house together all the time. It's going to be a little bit messy. That's fine.
That's a great example. Yeah, when you walk down the stairs and you see a shirt, or you see
It's
you
going to
know
happen. Yeah.
an empty bowl of cereal, it's like,
Right.
oh, okay, all right,
Right. Right.
You
Absolutely.
mentioned also, one point of how the family impacts individual behaviors.
Hmm.
Can you expound on that? How the family would impact an individual behavior, and vice versa. Like with
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I get this a lot, and it's interesting because this was actually part of the reason that my field, marriage and family therapy, was created, is that we noticed that patients in the hospital, they would get better in the hospital, they would return home, and then they would get sick again. And so we started hospitalizing entire families to actually understand the dynamic, right? And fix the whole system rather than just one person. So one thing I get a lot is that, oh, my child, he behaves so well in the masjid, he behaves so well at school, but then at home, I mean, he's just out of control and so on, right? That's a perfect example of how our behaviors change according to relationships, right? So the child might have a certain relationship with the imam or people at the masjid and so on, and so they know to behave a certain way. And our spouses as well, right? I get this as well from spouses, right? Like, a wife might complain that my husband is so friendly to people in the masjid and always smiling and so on, but then when he comes home, you won't even see him smile once, right? So what is it about, the relationship that the person views in the masjid compared to at home? What are some negative assumptions that they might have about the people at home that
Yeah.
causes that behavior, right? So
Mm.
that's what I mean by where, like, family and relationships influence individual behavior, because you have the same individual who's behaving very differently in different environments, according to different,
Mm.
very different around his coworkers, very different around her coworkers, very different around her friends group compared to maybe family. That makes sense?
Okay.
Yeah.
So which leads me to the next point. I mean, like reevaluating the family roles and
Mhm.
the structure and the relationship. So one thing that you mentioned is, which is common, which you know well, and I've seen numerous times, is the husband, mashallah, kif halak, yeah, mashallah, how's everything? But at home, when he enters the living room, everyone scatters out, like back
Right,
into their rooms, right? And they're
right,
on their, and it's just him in the living room.
right.
What should the father or mother do? And I'm using them as just an example.
Hmm.
When they see the different character
Right,
in one place, but it's not a non-desired character in the house, and it's
right,
affecting other people.
right. Absolutely, absolutely. Um, so we should strive to have good character regardless of the environment, right? That's our beloved example of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? His mercy was not just, with the people in the masjid. It was on the battlefield. It was during da'wah. It was at home with his spouse. It was around children, right? So there's not this kind of like double life. And so I encourage people, especially during this time, to really take a step back and look within yourselves, right? Like, it's a simple point, but we're really quick at, putting the blame on others, that, oh no, it's because it's a stressful environment and so on, and that's why I'm like that, and my spouse never smiles at me, so I don't smile back. What is your contribution to the chaos, right? And so
Mm,
this is kind of interesting. So there is, I won't get into too much detail about this, but I'm not sure if you've heard of attachment theory.
yes.
Yeah, Mary Ainsworth, right? So she talks about this whole idea of our relationships with our primary caregivers, and those experiences shaping the way that we interact with other people, particularly significant others, right? So there's something known as the AAI, Adult Attachment Interview, and what that covers, like, is really evaluating what type of attachment style you have towards your primary caregivers, your mother, your father, people who took care of you, and how that extends onto other intimate relationships, right? So one of the questions there is how you would describe your relationship with, your father or your mother, using an adjective, right? So what I tell people, this is part of the AI. You take an adjective, right? So you say, oh, it would be a warm relationship, or it would be a highly conflictual relationship, or friendly, or joking, or strict, or whatever. And then you take an experience and you see, does that experience match with that adjective, right? And so this is something that, like, I would ask parents to actually do with, like, their siblings, so on, and like, there's not sibling, with their children, with their spouse, and so on, right? Just to take a step back, how would I describe my relationship with my spouse? How would I describe my relationship with my youngest, with my middle, with my eldest, right? Give me, let me think of an adjective. Is it angry? Is it, and how would they describe me and my relationship? And does it match to certain examples? And if there is a problem there, if there's some type of conflict, right? So I'll give you an example. So this is a very, very extreme example, but one of my first patients, subhanAllah, like, she went through quite a bit of trauma, and so she had said, when I went through this question, she said that my relationship with my mom is very loving. Okay, and so then I asked her to give me an example, and she said, oh, when I was 10 years old, I burnt the rice, and my mom beat me for it. I mean, you see the complete disconnect. She said it without flinching, and so there was this complete disconnect. And so, that would be an example of a very unhealthy attachment, right? There might be parents who, or husband, wife, which will say, oh yeah, it's a very loving relationship. Okay, so then think of an example that highlights that adjective. And if you're not able to come up with something on the spot, there's a problem there. And if the other person is not, there's a problem there. And so then what steps need to be taken in order to have that loving relationship, right?
Right.
So that you could describe with adjectives of warmth, of comfort, of safety, of mawadda and rahma, sakina, right? So that's one challenge that I would have for everyone out there. Really, when we talk about family relationships, like, how do you describe it, and do you have examples that can actually match that? And if not, what's it going to take to break out of that, right? And one of the things that actually, two or three things, just real quick, just so that we have some action points, if it's all right if I mention, right? Number one is breaking out of negative assumptions, right? My child is just lazy, that's why he's doing that. An oversimplistic kind of explanation. Can we have some husn dhan, right? Yes, you're upset with the child's behavior, but why is he doing that, right? My spouse is just a mean person, that's why they're doing this, or they're controlling, that's why they're doing this, or they're this, that's why they're doing this, or she's lazy, that's why she's doing. Let's break out of negative assumptions of each other, right? He or she's just lazy, they don't really care, and commit to viewing each other in a better light. And what a better time than actually when you're stuck under the same roof. So that's the first thing, right? Then understanding that change takes time, being patient, and focusing on your successes. That, like, what, I saw a difference in the person's behavior. I did XYZ, whereas before I would have lost it over with my kids. I was more patient, and yeah, it's really that idea of what one of my professors would call, like, relieving family members from the role of the villain that we give them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first thing you mentioned was stop having negative assumptions. And it's interesting you mentioned that, like the word lazy. We use that with our boys a lot of times, right? And when I first heard you say that, it reminds me of that fixed mindset, right? When you say that, it's like, you are this, right? Meaning that is just what you are. There is no opportunity for change, right? It's just fixed. That's who you are, and that's it. There's no opportunity. And even depending on maybe, how you say it, the tone, and what event that you say it in, your response to something, right? I wanted to ask you, when you said this attention theory, attachment theory. should the father do that with the whole family and then sit around and say it to each family member and then they say it about each other, or should it be intimate, you and that person? How?
So first I would have the person just do it within themselves, right?
Within themselves. Yeah.
It has to be like, don't do this with the other person unless you're ready to listen to some type of criticism, some type of reality check, and not get defensive, right?
Okay.
Remember, like the key is to be able to look at your own contribution, right? Because what might happen is that, like, let's suppose you ask your spouse, right, how would you describe a relationship? And like the spouse says, well, you don't care, right? If you're not ready to hear that criticism, you don't have to agree with it or not, but like, you know, it opens up some type of conversation. If you're not ready to agree with that and you say, well, no, well, I did this, that's just opening the door for a fight. So I like, you know, this question, it's more, you know, kind of a self-reflection first and foremost. Be honest with yourself about it, right?
Okay.
And then after that, if you want to, like, you can have this conversation, but I would much rather people, like, if they're truly honest with themselves, they will find, most for the most part, nobody's perfect, room for improvement, and they can talk about those positive things, or even just not even necessarily talk about it, but actually start acting it out, right? Like, wow, so I really do view this person as lazy, for example, right? I really do view that my child is lazy. So how am I going to combat that? Now let me make a conscious effort to notice the good that he's doing, to notice the good that she's doing, and actually point it out. When was the last time that I actually praised my child, as opposed to being hyper focused on the mess that they're leaving every day? When was the last time I said Jazakumullah khair to my spouse, instead of being hyper focused on just all the stress around me, right?
Yeah, that's subhanallah. So that's kind of, you know, when we say self-reflection, then I guess, you know, one practical way to go through this process of self-reflection, because a lot of times we just say reflect, but right there using the attachment theory method is very, very interesting. So just to kind of recap on that, it's use an adjective to describe the relationship with another family member and immediately attach an event to that adjective.
Right.
And see if there's a connection with that adjective and the event.
If it matches, if it matches. Right? And so typically we do this in a therapy setting. This is more for you know, evaluating a person's relationship with their primary caregiver during their childhood, right? That's what's called the adult attachment interview. So it's for an adult who's recollecting their childhood and so on, right? But I'm just trying to utilize this at this time, just for us to evaluate relationships overall, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then hopefully, as people are listening, they're maybe thinking about, like, okay, yeah, you know, how is my relationship with my sibling? Is it fun? Is it easygoing? Is it stressful? How's my relationship with my son or my daughter or my spouse or my parents?
Yes.
Yeah.
I see here.
No, and I think it helps when we are able to focus more on the adjectives, because then we're focusing on the actual relationship as opposed to specific events here and there. Yeah. You know, we're not getting caught up in the minutia. We're talking about, well, maybe it's not as loving as I want it to be. Maybe it's not as friendly. Maybe it's not as warm. So what needs to be done in order to get it that way? Yeah. Okay. 2-minute warning. Can I just, we have some questions.
Right.
Just somebody said, like, my kid developed OCD in this pandemic. If it's truly obsessive compulsive disorder, it needs to be diagnosed properly by a therapist. That is something that I work on. There's multiple therapists which are trained in this. There's something like cognitive behavioral therapy and exposure therapy. These are the two things that have shown wonderful results for OCD. My advice to anybody noticing any type of OCD traits in their children or in themselves, the faster you resolve it, the easier it is, right? A lot of times people will come to me after maybe a decade, maybe more, of OCD behaviors, and then, you know, trying to break out of that. It's not impossible, but it's a lot more challenging than when it just starts. You know, alhamdulillah, like there was one case where the person came to me. He had some, you know, cleaning OCD and so on, and it wasn't that long that he was struggling with it. So within like 2 or 3 sessions, he was completely, alhamdulillah, rid of it, because he was very quick, you know, tabarakallah, like, at recognizing, hey, this is a problem and it's going to start interfering with my life. And so don't delay in getting help. Yeah.
Okay, so wait till another question comes in, but I have, even to take a step back on that, what is a sign of OCD? Give me an example. Someone may not even know that it's a problem. So what are some of the habits or the things that they may do which could be a sign of OCD?
Oh yeah, we're gonna let's open that door. Yeah, so OCD, it's a huge spectrum, right?
Okay.
When we think of OCD, we usually think of the person washing their hands 100 times. No, there's multiple different variants within OCD. There's something known as scrupulosity, which is a religious form of OCD. I think that's something maybe that we won't be able to cover in this entire talk, but just a very simple explanation. OCD stands for obsessive compulsive disorder. Obsessions are your thoughts. So, for example, oh my God, if I don't wash my hands right now, I'm going to get COVID. Or, oh my God, if I go out for a second, I'm going to get COVID, right? And then your compulsions are to act on those thoughts, right? So it becomes a disorder when it starts to interfere with your day-to-day functioning. Like, I mean, that being said, with COVID, now we're washing our hands more because that's what, the CDC recommends. We're covering our mouth because that's what the CDC recommends, right? But when it starts getting to an extreme, like, for example, like I have to wash my clothes 10 times a day. I have to, when I get letters in the mail and so on, I have to like bleach them and so on. I mean, that's where, that obsessive thought of, oh my God, I'm going to get sick. I'm going to get sick. I'm going to get sick. And I have to do something to act on it. And usually that one thing is completely unreasonable. That's when it becomes a problem. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it does. And that's where, see, somebody says you were talking about relationships in the house. No, the reason I asked about this is because just exactly what you said. Someone may be outside and then another friend may be like, you have to do this shit. And the other friend is like, look, you're overreacting. And then the other friend is like, no, I'm not overreacting. I don't want to get sick because, and then an argument could break out. And that's where, but at the same time, you don't want the family to say, look, you have OCD. And we need
yeah, in that sense, yeah. Again, and this is where like letting go of certain things, right? So people who are generally very neat and so on, and like they're going to they're going to be a little bit more that way. That's okay. It's all right to take a step back and be a little bit more patient and understand these are different times that we're going through, right? I wouldn't consider that OCD. I mean, OCD really is where it reaches the realm of just complete, and I know it sounds subjective, but like it reaches the realm of like just complete like irrationality, right? Where let me give an example of something that like might be an OCD behavior, and just so if I don't say Bismillah 3 times before washing my hands, then the germs won't come out. I have to say Bismillah 3 times. And if I say it 2 times, for sure it's not. And so like, and if I just say Bismillah once and wash my hands, I'm going to keep thinking about, but I still have to say it 2 more times. So then I'll go back and say Bismillah, Bismillah 2 more times and wash my hands again.
Right.
This is not something found within the Sunnah, and it's not something found in medical science, but it's something that the OCD has created in order to make you, quote unquote, feel safe. Does that make sense?
No, it makes a lot of sense. I think there needs to be a whole session on this. And,
I would love to talk about that. That's actually, even though I'm a marriage and family therapist, I really enjoy working with anxiety, depression, and OCD in particular. So, but okay, look, it looks like we have to wrap up, inshallah, for today.
Sure. No, Jazakallah khair. Alhamdulillah, for those watching, we really want to make these sessions short and sweet, cover points, stick to the points to the best of our ability, and make sure, as he's done, as he always does, and I benefit. I mean, as you see here, I have my pencil and my pad here. I mean, just remember those key terms, the attachment theory, for those of you to look up, and hopefully the next class you'll ask questions because you've gotten a little educated, looking those things up. And also, the points that we covered is basically looking at the opportunity, as opposed to a disadvantage, but seeing the opportunity within this, mashallah. And then also, just, taking a step back, as he mentioned, taking a step back and evaluating the situation and, learning how to adjust and maybe, quote unquote, letting go because of this change and the impact that it's had. But alhamdulillah, I guess that could be an action item. Brother Usman, what do you
Yeah,
say?
no, absolutely, absolutely. For those listening, like I said, I mean, this is a time I want to see the positive in this in these events that perhaps Allah Azza wa Jal has made it such a situation that we're put under one roof, right? I mean, just like the uh, everything that just happened these last few days. SubhanAllah, I was in an area, I was out of state where, SubhanAllah, where the hotel I was staying at ran out of running water. And then I arrived in Dallas and my apartment was out of electricity. And so I was like, SubhanAllah, like, these are two simple blessings that I took for granted. And, inshallah, I'm going to try my best. And I hope we all do to make a conscious effort now that most of us, or hopefully all of us have our power back, is to not lose gratitude for some of these basic blessings, right? So in the same way, there's a hikmah behind Allah sending COVID, and I want to hopefully see it in the positive light. To see it in the positive light that maybe this is a chance for us to grow closer as a family, for us to reevaluate our relationships and change negative patterns and reconnect.
No, mashallah, mashallah. That's great. So, alhamdulillah, I'll conclude there. So I guess this week, inshallah, this month, if you for that self-reflection, think of a relationship, use an adjective for it, and then see if that one event, as we mentioned, connects with it. I think is the correct word. Connects with it.
Yeah. Matches with it, right?
Matches.
If it's loving, like, okay, what have I done that's loving, towards my children? What have I done that's loving towards me, and so on? And then, where's there room for improvement in that? Yeah.
Yeah, mashallah. I think it's one self-reflection that we can try to implement from this session, inshallah. May Allah bless you all, inshallah. Inshallah, we'll tune in next month, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. And we will keep you posted. If you'll find it on the WhatsApp, on the Islamic Center of Coppell. And also if you go to Peaceful You, you can find updates on there. If you're on the Facebook as well, of the Islamic Center of Coppell, we have an Instagram account as well, Islamic Center of Coppell. And you can see it on my Instagram as well, Abdullah _Oduro. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. Jazakumullah khair. And the next session will be, inshallah, speaking about the spouses, the husband and wife. We're going to talk about that, inshallah, and bring a couple points and hopefully bring a couple of action items with that as well. So may Allah bless you all.
That's the cornerstone of the family, is the husband. That's why we therapists, we start off always with that relationship before any other relationship. We call it the spousal hollow, or the spousal, sub relationship, whatever you want to call it. If that's strong, the rest of the family is generally strong. So that's why we always try and start off with that relationship before any other relationship.
Mashallah, mashallah. Excellent. So please stay tuned, inshallah, and stay tuned for this, what's coming up next month, inshallah. And spread the word, spread the link to the people, inshallah, so we can all benefit. Jazakumullah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.